Hey, algebrainiacs. So this next question, of course, is an algebra question. So if you remember, in order for points to be collinear, they all lie on the same line, and we know that the slope is constant everywhere. So if I call this A and B and C, I know that the slope from A to B has to equal the slope from B to C. And I also remember that slope is the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So that's from A to B. And from B to C, it'll look like this. And so now, if I cross multiply, of course I'll simplify those numerators out when I do it all in one step, I'm going to get all of this magic. So my final answer is that t is negative 53/3. Pause as you need to. So we'll be doing a lot of writing equations of lines because we're going to be doing tangent lines to curves. And so of course we have all the different forms for writing equations of lines on the other side of your paper. So I'm going to use whichever one seems most appropriate. Here I have a slope, and of course I have a point, so I would use point slope form, which would give me this equation. And if I want to be an overachiever, I can convert it to y equals mx plus b, which would look like this. And if I want to overachieve even more, I could turn it into standard form, which would look like this. All that magic. So if there's something that you don't understand, be prepared to ask that tomorrow, but I would expect that you could write all three of those. Okay, so next, I of course would first want to find the slope, so I put my equation in y equals, and I have a negative slope, and if I want to be perpendicular, I remember that the slopes are negative reciprocals, so I'm going to use a slope now of +1, and I'm still using that same 0.13, so I'm going to put it in all three forms, starting with point slope, which would look like that, hocus pocus. And then I'm going to turn it into y equals mx plus b, which would look like that, hocus pocus. And then I'm going to turn it into standard form, which would look like that magic. Again, I would expect that you could generate all three of those, so practice until you can. On the next one, since they give me another point, of course the first thing I have to do is find slope. So I'm going to use my slope formula. Again, the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So I get a slope of 1. And again, I'll start out with point slope form. And these answers, oh wow, look at that. It's the exact same as this one. So my y equals mx plus b will look exactly like this, and my standard form will look exactly like this. And then last but not least, if I want to be parallel to the x-axis, that means I've got a vertical line. And if you remember, vertical lines are all x equals. So I simply need to look at the x-coordinate, and it's x equals 1. On these next problems, before I put up the answers, you really should pause and try to do these yourself. So number 5, if I rewrite without the absolute value symbol, of course, this is -9 on the inside, which gives me just 9. This one, I'm just going to end up with 5 minus the square root of 2. Now, this one here, remember we talked about this being a piece function, and so that piece function turns into 3 minus x when the stuff inside is positive. So I have to come out here and say, well, when is it positive? It's positive if x is less than 3. And then I have to look at when is it negative? And it's negative if x is greater than 3. And since that's the piece that I want, then this will actually be my final answer. And of course I could distribute and get x minus 3.